Once a year, downtown Henderson, North Carolina becomes a mecca to the rides and racers of drag racing's history, as the East Coast Drag Times Hall of Fame holds its annual car show. Up next on Dream Rides.
Welcome, everybody, as Dustless Blasting presents a special edition of Dream Rides, coming to you from downtown Henderson, North Carolina, the site of the annual East Coast Drag Times Hall of Fame induction ceremonies and reunion. You know, this is an absolutely amazing event held just south of the Virginia-North Carolina border that every year brings thousands of cars and tens of thousands of spectators to the streets of this gorgeous little town. As a matter of fact, it is now becoming the East Coast Seaboard base for all kinds of nostalgia stuff, with this year a special emphasis on the gas coupes and sedans. A great example of that is Gene Schwartz's 1952 Chevrolet Business Coupe that campaigned around the Cleveland, Ohio area, with indeed a fuel-injected small block Chevrolet that was put together by some of the best-known names in drag racing years later. Soon-to-be legendary engine builder at the time, Ron Hutter, created the fuel-injected small block Chevrolet that burned gasoline. Joe Harudka and his then burgeoning Mr. Gasket Company supplied the gaskets for this machine. And Gene Schwartz himself would leave the starting line at over 10,000 RPM with this manually shifted monster that set the NHRA and AHRA national records for its category throughout the 1960s. Maintaining the gas coupe and sedan theme, a huge contingent of English Ford Anglias has appeared this year at Henderson, and the fans have been pouring all over them. And that group includes some of the best-known names in the history of those lightweight, short wheelbase, high center of gravity machines that dominated the supercharged and fuel-injected gas coupe and sedan classes throughout the 1960s. Bob Sarkeesian's Hellacious legend is a great example of them, but these English Ford Anglias were produced in the 1930s and 1940s, but didn't become popular over here in the United States until after World War II. Nobody knows that better than one of the great gas coupe legends, Gene Altizer. Where did you find one of these so early?
Junkyards were just loaded full of them. I had 14 of them at one time. Started building them in '62, and then when I won the Nationals in '63, it was the first one to ever win a national championship in the A gas class. It was a neat little car to drive. It was a shame, you know, but a lot of guys really did get hurt real bad and killed in these things because they were so...
What would you attribute?
Most people would narrow the rear ends in them so much that the stability of the car went away. And I always made the rear tread wider and all, and ran the wide cars, the wheels outside the fenders a lot of times. And when you got in trouble, like I did in '64, the engine blew up and the rear wheels locked up. It went spinning around and backwards and everything going through the lights, 136 miles an hour.
I gotta ask, what was the advantage to this car?
The lightweight of it and aerodynamics, I guess.
Towards the end of the gas coupe's reign, at least in popularity, a lot of these cars had fiberglass front ends and other things in the gas coupe and sedan classes. But this car originally started out all steel, right?
They all started out all steel, and the only reason that mine had a white front end because I got in a bad accident head-on over in Washington, D.C. 3 weeks before the Nationals. And I was blessed with winning it and running for the medal eliminator, too. Went all the way through that to George Montgomery, was runner-up.
Gene was one of the very first guys to compete in one of these cars, but these 1948 Anglias are indeed still a rarity. When it comes to drag racing history, behind every great man is usually an even greater father. A lot of people know the name Alan Johnson in NHRA Mellow Yellow Pro Stock Racing, but hardly anybody realizes that the best driver in the family is this old guy. He has to be because he taught everything he knows to his son. This car, 1962 Plymouth, has got to be one of the winningest cars in at least IHRA Superstock history.
I think it was. Won a lot of money with it, paid myself out of debt with it, and Alan came along and he won with it, so it's amongst the top.
This was the original Johnson family race car, was it not?
Yes, it started at Airwood and Johnson, my partner, which is here today.
Right.
He got me into that, and we had two just alike, and then we traded, and I wound up with this car, and I won my first big national meet with it, and then Alan won his first with it. Then we had another little track up in Kingsport, Tennessee, that I ran at a lot. We got protested over there, and then the people that protested us, a week or two later, we protested them. They loaded up and went home.
That was about the way the old class racing used to operate, wasn't it?
Oh, that was fun days then, you know. That was very fun.
Is it still fun for you?
Well, it's a challenge, I guess, more than fun, because I love to see if I can outdo you or whoever, and it's just almost impossible for me to do that anymore. But to me, the fun part of it is hard work, and that's all I know.
Dustless Blasting presents Dream Rides is being brought to you by Steel Rubber Products, quality crafted rubber parts and weather stripping. Hurst, America's #1 shifter. New Print Customs, hydrographics, powder coating, and custom coatings. And by Dustless Blasting, it's the future of surface preparation.
Welcome back as Dustless Blasting presents Dream Rides, coming to you from the streets of Henderson, North Carolina, and the annual East Coast Drag Times Hall of Fame induction ceremonies and reunion. You know, here in Henderson, North Carolina, this event draws car fans from all over the eastern seaboard each and every year, but really, when you get right down to it, there's only one person to thank, Nancy Wilson, who, by the way, does this not on the auspices of yourself or a group who's trying to make money on this. You do this basically for the community.
That's correct.
Who's behind it?
Vance County Tourism Development Authority.
This draws more people than anybody would have ever expected to a town that really isn't used to seeing this kind of activity. But over the years, it's been growing now to where we're almost at 5,000 cars, and goodness knows how many spectators.
It continues to grow, and we are so thankful. But, you know, they love coming to our little town. It's a little town with a big show.
It should be pointed out that the town is not closed down for this event. Quite the opposite. All the businesses are open.
That's right, and this is a free show. It's free and open to the public.
We've almost run out of room now. What can actually be expanded here, if anything?
I think we can open some side lots up. Yeah.
Open up more streets.
Yes, more side lots. Yeah.
It'll turn into a 3-day walk-a-thon.
We'll do something. I will not turn them away.
Well, we're here to show you all the incredible vehicles and personalities that have shown up, but we wanted you to meet the one person that is the creator of this entire fantastic event. Old-time drag racing fans might remember when this particular car changed the face of supercharged gassers. This is Bob Ida's incredible Austin Healey. Now, you might know that name as he is one of the best-known car customizers on the planet nowadays. But 50 years ago, he was building stuff like this in his garage on the eastern seaboard. Bob, this thing just obliterated the concepts that everybody held so near and dear of those early-style gas coupes.
Yeah, we actually had a Willys before this, and we noticed that every time we lowered the front, the car went a little faster. So it kind of got us to think about building a smaller car. So we found this car in a junkyard, and it may have been a very late 56 where some 57 parts went on it, because it's two-seater, but it has a 57-style grille, threw the big Hemi in it, and the rest was history.
But there was a lot of controversy when you built the car from the other racers who said, wait, the wheelbase is too short, and the car is too light, and all that other stuff.
We figured that they were already Austins in the class, and the wheelbase of an angle, he was like 98, it's like 98, so I figured it fits in the package, let's go with it, and really, no one argued it.
Now, you said you wanted to lower the front end, but the rear end of this thing was way lower than anything else.
Oh yeah, definitely. Actually, that was supposed to offset the wheel stand, but it really only sometimes did. Sometimes it just stood straight up. When you let the clutch out, you really didn't know where it was going to go.
I have to ask, for all the Ida Automotive fans out there, what are you building at home?
Well, actually, we're doing a restoration of the car previous to this, the Willys, so we'll have that here probably next year. And then we're working on the Lawson Design Tucker, building that car from scratch, and it came from a 3D scan of the quarter-scale model in the Peterson Museum, yeah. And we're still very friendly with the Tucker family. In fact, they're the ones that found this car. John Tucker spotted it and told his son, Sean, you want to call Rob, I think this car's a stats.
Unreal.
Yeah, so Rob says, you know, I think we're going to rebuild the Austin Healey. I said, no, we have no time, we're too busy. He says, too late, I already bought it. It's in Indy, go get it.
Jim Zakia originally hailed from Niagara Falls, New York, and campaigned a variety of gas coupes and sedans that were dominant throughout the 1960s and into the 1970s, even, in fact, towards the very end of the gas coupe and sedan reign in NHRA competition. He used to campaign a 1972 Opel GT in the A-gas category with a big cubic inch engine, but that all ended after a season of wild rides.
1991 was the last year I raced it at Indy. And then I rolled that car up at Cuga, got into some water. But this is a whole new Top Sportsman chassis. It's in length and 10 inches and wide and 5 inches, 106-inch wheelbase.
As opposed to what was it when it was
96.
No wonder you crashed the car.
But it's the same body that I ran before, except for the front end.
And I should point out that these things were metal. This wasn't a fiberglass car like a Corvette. A lot of people confuse that.
It's a metal car with a glass front end. And when the motor's not a Hemi in it, it's got a 632 all aluminum Brodex motor in it. So
Nitrous motor?
2 systems of nitrous, yeah.
Nobody knows better than you what was going on around 1972 with the gas coupes. The funny cars and the Pro Stockers were overshadowing them tremendously. You ran a lot of the early body styles, the Willies and everything else, but you switched to this late model deal mainly just to keep the cars relevant.
Yeah, well, it was aerodynamics. It was a real good car back then for aerodynamics. It worked really well. I'd run that car a long time in A gas. And then I switched to B gas with the car. I put a smaller D-stroke Hemi motor in it. Yeah, I ran it until I stopped running NHRA.
But what about that ride at Indy where the thing went up on 2 wheels at the finish line?
A friend of mine, we made new bars up and made it out of too thin a tubing. The car bit so hard and shook off the line, it bent the ladder bar and moved the rear end forward and actually tried to steer the back of the car. All the way down the track, it wasn't handling right. As soon as I let up on the gas, the thing just violently went up on 2 wheels. The parachute saved me from going over.
The parachute helped, but this guy's driving ability is legendary, and that's one of the reasons that he's still here to be inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. Welcome back to downtown Henderson, North Carolina, as Dustless Blasting brings you Dream Rides, a very special edition that includes an awful lot of some of the East Coast's most incredible drag racing vehicles. Case in point, the Chiquita Banana 1931 Chevrolet of the Mumley family, completely restored to the way it was when it ran in gas coupe competition some 50 years ago. But there's another machine here that everybody that raced on the Eastern Seaboard knew or at least saw at one time. It's the Maury brothers, who really was the first team in drag racing to do something impressive with the Volkswagen body. Back then, everybody was into the small, lightweight, low center of gravity cars, the Crosleys, the Henry J's, the Austins.
And that's why we built the Volkswagen. We went to the Nationals in 1959 in Detroit, and I told my brother Gene, I said, I've seen every kind of altered except for Volkswagens.
You had to have gotten an awful lot of grief when you pulled in the gates the first time with this car.
Well, it didn't look this good back then, and people were surprised to see it, that's for sure.
But you proved that it was everything a gasser should be. It had good weight transfer. It is a little higher than stock, obviously a higher center of gravity, but that's what the car needed to hook up on those old tires, I would imagine.
Yeah, they're small tires. But this is the same car that him and I built in 1964. We started running it in 65. He sold it in 72, and I bought it back 40 years later in 2012. Same frame that him and I welded together on the garage floor, same body, same front end, and the chrome work was still even good on it.
Was it stored that whole time?
Matt Stanbaugh had it last.
The Stanbaugh family is always good at finding crazy stuff like that.
Yeah, somebody had chopped the top.
Oh dear.
Matt had somebody unchop it. I took the body off and sandblasted it, and then Gene finished it up. He was 82 when he painted this car. He's 83 now, and I'm 77, and we're still having fun with it.
This is the guy who should be given all the credit for the current crop of really popular drag racing TV shows. Nobody realizes that back in the 1960s, you would go race for insane amounts of money just outside some of the larger airports in the New York City metropolitan area. Now, I want to point out that the cars that you were racing back then were, in fact, some killer drag racing machinery. Some of the most competitive pro stockers of the day to go race them on the street for big money. Where did this car come from?
This car came from Rich Maracki out of Syracuse, New York.
The old Mimi Pro Stocker.
The old Mimi Pro Stocker.
You ran Pro Stock, you ran Modified Eliminator with this car, right. Pretty much any time you could run.
Right, any class I could get in at the time.
You didn't actually get into a grudge race, if you want to call it that, on the drag strip until almost the end of your driving career.
And I found out I could do better financially racing guys for money than I could running professionally at the track.
I know that 6 numbers and 5 zeros was an occasional number.
Yeah, because you figure it like in this very particular car here. When I bought it, I paid $6,000 for it. 3 weeks later, I ran Earl Mitchell for $10,000 and won. And that was,
Everything after that was profit. Yeah, let's not forget, you're talking $10,000 50 years ago.
I had a team of 13 of us. That's how we backed the car and financed the car. A lot of people never knew exactly what I was doing at the time. Out of our pocket, we only put up $50 a week.
Did you get to pick and choose your races, or did you have to take on all comers?
I just took on all comers, that's all it was. I didn't get to pick and choose because everybody was after me. Everybody's running 427, 430s, 454s. Fortunately, I had a 495 Can-Am motor that nobody knew about. In fact, the Can-Am motor I got from Meraki because he couldn't get it to run out of the 10s.
The Can-Am motor wasn't legal for pro stock at the time anyway.
Legal, no way.
Yeah.
And all I did to it was put 2 big carburetors on it. And I got through out of Englishtown with it, running 950.
Because you probably entered pro stock with it, didn't you? Well, never let it be said that he didn't try to get away with stuff, but most of the time he didn't have to get away with stuff because, like I said, Levi Holmes is being inducted into the East Coast Hall of Fame this year because he was indeed a huge part of the beginning of this type of big money match racing that right now seems to be the latest craze, but in fact has been around since the beginning of time.
Time now to learn about Dustless Blasting's tools and opportunities with Brian Loans.
One of the neat things about Dustless Blasting is they open their facility up to potential customers so they can come down and get a look at exactly how the system works and what goes into building the systems. I'm here with Mike, who's come down from Canada to give the Dustless Blasting system a test drive. Mike, what got you interested in Dustless Blasting?
Blasting without dust. Clean up the shop a little bit, higher productivity, just options, so we can expand and do what we need to do cleanly and have a comfortable work environment for our guys.
You're in the business of painting big stuff. We're not talking pickup trucks, we're talking dump trucks and heavy equipment.
Big stuff.
So when we talk about the needs, your surface preparation needs are going to be different than a typical body shop, right?
Much different, yeah. We have to blast clean, and anywhere we can minimize hand prepping with a clean blast and efficiency, we'll take it,
You gave me a good stat earlier. Give me the size of your paint booths at your shop, because this is good.
We have 4 booths, and they're 65 feet long.
Yeah, 65-foot long paint booth is not something anybody who's ever built a hot rod has ever seen in their life.
Not exactly. That's it.
Well, what's been your impression coming down and seeing the manufacturing and then getting a demonstration of the system?
So far, the manufacturing's nice. It's been impressive. I like the facility, I like the building, I like the equipment. I just want to continue the demo, get the big one going, big compressor, and see what it can do.
Well, Mike, thanks for coming down and check everything out. Hope everything goes well in your demonstration. And again, it's a great thing to be able to come down to Texas, use the system yourself, and make your own judgment on just how effective it can be for your business.
Dustless Blasting presents Dream Rides is being brought to you by Steel Rubber Products, quality crafted rubber parts and weather stripping, B&M Racing and Performance, quality performance products that work, Race Star Wheels, high performance alloy wheels for passenger automobiles and a variety of racing vehicles, and by Dustless Blasting. It's the future of surface preparation.
Since we're concentrating on full-body passenger production cars with some of the biggest motors in history inside them here at Henderson, North Carolina, let's take a look at one of the absolute most astounding early model Hemi Mopars we've ever seen. From Paynesville, Ohio, this is an A990 machine with the Ramcharger twin 4-barrel 426 Hemi, and I have to ask, is it real?
No. The body came out of Atlanta, Georgia, was really in tough shape. Took floor pans, a cowl, wheel lip moldings. I mean, a lot of work to get the body in the shape that we needed it. And then we started collecting parts. So, like, for example, when we ran across the magnesium intake, it's $2,600. We bought it, we put it away. For 7 years, we collected parts, built the car, and we've had it out since 2012 for 4 years.
Even the grill. Where'd you find stuff like that?
Well, we didn't. We had to take 2 regular grills, and we cut, made our own. Then we sent it out and had it chromed rather than bright dip, because bright dipping really accentuates the pot marks and stuff.
One of you is a heck of a historian, because even things like the way the interior was delivered in these cars, where did you get that information?
I jokingly say I own stock in Jim Kramer's Kramer Automotive, which we were lucky. Eddie Streleski's, he's out of Detroit's real black A990 car sits at Kramer's. We did 150 plus pictures of that car. Jim Kramer gave me his last set of A100 van seats. We had the interior made by a guy named Ralph Farinacci, and so it's a good hobby for us. That's what it is. And it's a labor of love.
This car is absolutely immaculate. Is there anything that you're not satisfied with in this car?
Really?
No, I'll say yes.
Say no, I love this car.
There are a couple of things, if I had this to do over again, I would do differently. I would not put that Chevrolet Master Cylinder on there. That's a story in its own. That at the end of the project, we're running low on money. And I had that sitting in the garage, and I wanted four-wheel disc brakes so I could drive the car on the street. And I threw that on, and every Mopar guy goes nuts every time he sees that Chevrolet Master Cylinder. And I would detune it at 770 at light dyno. It's a little more for the street than really what I would like. I'd like to have 600 horse. I mean, I'm not racing the car, it's for fun.
770 is too much. 600 would be fine.
Yes, exactly.
Long before the Super Cobra jet became the dominant Ford, this was the baddest thing you could buy. But it wasn't necessarily a true production car.
Ford sent 100 Fairlanes from their factory to Dearborn Steel Tubing in Dearborn, Michigan in 1963, and they were built up from the frame, strengthened, traction bars, better suspension, a 427 engine, and about half of the 100 Thunderbolts built were automatic transmissions and about half were 4-speeds, so it would be legal in the super stock class of the day, and it would be lighter than the previous year's full-size Galaxy lightweight car, and it did the job. This car has a fiberglass hood, identical to the original Thunderbolts, fiberglass fenders, fiberglass deck lid in the back, and some of the Thunderbolts had fiberglass doors. The original Thunderbolt had a fiberglass bumper like this.
On the front.
On the front, and a steel bumper on the back, again for weight in the back.
Manifold and carburation was also something that was unusual in these cars.
The original Thunderbolts had 2 4-barrels. This one has 1. It's a little more dependable for street use. There were intake ducts that came down, and the duct connects here so that the air is forced into the duct and directly to the bonnet and into the carburetors. This car is a close replica of the very first Ford Thunderbolt. It was maroon and white, had stickers like this. It was driven by Dick Brannon from South Bend, Indiana. I was an 18-year-old kid working at the Martin US 131 drag while I was a senior in high school, and he brought his Thunderbolt to Martin and just did extremely well. I remember the numbers. It was 1188, 120 miles an hour.
Let's talk about the interior, because a lot of people will look in there and say, well, this is kind of silly.
Actually, there is a matching passenger seat that can go in it. I have it at home, just didn't have it for the show today. But you could use these seats in place of the bench seat, because these were the seats used in the Ford Econoline.
And that back seat can hold a family of 5, no problem, right?
Family of 5, yeah. No, it's lightweight material also, and so it's not a passenger car, although it looks like a passenger car.
It looks like
Super stockers had to have them because of how the stock cars were. Although they were called super stock cars, they really were not streetable.
In fact, some of the ones that were legal for street use, you'd have to be an idiot to drive it on the street.
Or, how shall we say, adventurous.
Dustless Blasting Presents Dream Rides continues its coverage of the East Coast Drag Times Car Show next week with classic rides.